Did you know the Indiana Jones universe has a story many have never heard? I'm Mark from Digital Dissection. I absolutely do not trust myself with a bullwhip, and today we're unearthing some PC gaming history you might have missed. Before we rediscover Indy's graphic adventures, be sure to subscribe and click the bell to be notified of new videos and more pop culture content on this channel, where we're always dissecting. On June 21st, 1981, Raiders of the Lost Ark premiered, kicking off the film universe of Indiana Jones. The wildly successful action-adventure series, written by George Lucas and directed by Steven Spielberg, actually didn't have much enthusiasm before its premiere. But despite the lack of media buzz, it became the highest-grossing film of the year. 8 years later, in 1989, Indiana Jones was a full-fledged media empire, which now included LucasArts, which housed Industrial Light and Magic, Skywalker Sound, and a video game division of Lucasfilm that had existed for 7 years. At the time, however, Lucasfilm did not own the rights to create Star Wars games, as these rights were owned exclusively by Atari, and instead the studio chose to focus on original games and intellectual property. While you might know some of LucasArts' early projects, we're obviously not talking to the TikTok generation, their development of point-and-click graphic adventures earned them a reputation for thoughtful, yet equally entertaining gaming experiences. One of the earliest would be Maniac Mansion, introducing a unique game engine named Scum, or Secret Creation Utility for Maniac Mansion. The revolutionary system allowed for developers to build dialogue, locations, and the guts of their games in a programming language different from their final source code. With the Scum engine and the impending arrival of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, LucasArts sought out to adapt the film using this platform. Despite only being the third game on the Scum engine, The Last Crusades graphic adventure was rated highly after its release in July 1989. Widely regarded as one of the best film-to-video game adaptations, the title provided a sense of exploration that not all properties get to have. As Indiana Jones, you can explore familiar locations, interact with the film's characters, and experience some slightly altered scenes from the movie. You are able to do so with a series of verbs, where you can talk to NPCs, pick up items, and open and close containers as examples. The changes to Last Crusade's plot weren't just randomized either, as the game's structure and DNA was heavily influenced by Steven Spielberg and George Lucas themselves. Its primary designers were legendary LucasArts developers Ron Gilbert, Noah Falstein, and David Fox, who in many ways opened up possibilities within the point-and-click genre. The majority of Indy's graphic adventure meant solving puzzles with varying levels of difficulty and relied on the player to interact with the environment, read its many clues, and strategically acquire and use items to advance. If you were already a fan of Indiana Jones, this game would likely already satisfy a need to feel closer to the property. While it can now easily be beat in only a few hours, when it premiered it took quite a bit longer to complete, as we didn't have YouTube, and most gaming guides were essentially word of mouth. Look, I'm old, it was a simpler time, okay? Shut up. Due to the time period, however, not everyone was able to have access to a personal computer, and in some ways, Indy's graphic adventure went unnoticed. This is despite the game selling 250,000 units, making it one of LucasArts' best-performing titles at the time. It was here, however, that LucasArts would begin development on one of the greatest games ever made, and possibly the greatest Indiana Jones story ever told. During 1990, LucasArts decided a sequel to its graphic adventure was a good next move, but it meant having to put together a new creative team. Ron Gilbert was tied up in developing the award-winning Secret of Monkey Island series, and designer Hal Barwood would be selected to be director for an original story unique from any Indiana Jones films. Noah Falstein would return as designer from The Last Crusade, and together with Barwood, they would consider several ideas. One would involve a rejected third film script that would have been directed by Chris Columbus, called Indiana Jones and the Monkey King, or The Garden of Life. But Barwood, being a former screenwriter, took issue with the concept, instead opting out for an independent story that they'd build on their own. Falstein and Barwood would land on a series of books discovered at George Lucas' Skywalker Ranch that included the lost city of Atlantis, specifically the idea that it was a city with 3 concentric circles. Basically 3 circular paths that grew larger with each ring, and the Atlanteans' supposed discovery of orichalcum, a unique metal used to build their empire. We had the chance to sit down with Noah Falstein in 2022, and the grassroots efforts involved in his and Barwood's research combined in an effort that showed their prowess not just within storytelling, but also bringing technology to the table. After forging their core concept, Barwood quickly got to work on building the Atlantean story, seamlessly writing it into Indiana Jones and real-world lore, borrowing threads from the philosopher Plato and having Atlantean culture influence that of the Minoans, one of the first civilizations during the Aegean Bronze Age, from 3100 to 1100 BC, on the island of Crete, south of Greece. Armed with research that was largely built around possible pseudoscience and real parts history, the perfect backdrop for Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis was able to form. Like its predecessor, Fate of Atlantis would mirror the experience of the Last Crusade graphic adventure, but with some adjustments to its storytelling. The Last Crusades graphic adventure allowed you to solve through critical thinking, but also included paths for fighting your way through certain obstacles. Fate of Atlantis instead chose to offer 3 distinct narrative choices, where Indy can think or fight, but also involve a teamwork-driven narrative that includes Sophia Hapgood, an original character from Indy's past whom he met in 1929, before many of the mysteries of Atlantis were discovered. The optional storytelling branches, according to Noah Falstein, meant that an additional 6 months was added to the game's development cycle to accommodate. The game's 2-year development cycle and theatrical feel of Barwood's script gave Fate of Atlantis a look and feel that was worthy of Hollywood. Its improved art style over that of Last Crusade and its narrative appeal combined for an experience that felt like a spiritual 4th film in the franchise. Part of Indiana Jones' widespread appeal early in its history was that its stories involved typically real artifacts rooted in historical fiction, and often its mysteries can make viewers question their validity until certain elements of the supernatural take over. Fate of Atlantis in many ways matches the vibe of the series playbook, introducing elements of Atlantean culture into the Indiana Jones universe. However, they're viewed as speculative, as some of the other relics of the past have been. But the story ramps up the Lost City's relevance as more than archaeology, as it's discovered that the Third Reich once again wants to use its secrets for world domination. For this reason, the graphic adventure format not only provides an excellent way to connect Indiana Jones directly, but players get the chance to use the character in the way they see fit, as Indy's character in general can often be equal parts fighter, thought leader, and investigator. Due to the game's flexibility in terms of pathways, this led to a playthrough that players can choose to invest in, and each narrative paid off in a different way, while maintaining the charm and attitude point-and-click games balanced between seriousness and well-placed humor. Its overall story, however, is deeply compelling, not only feeling believable as an Indiana Jones story, but also something that feels realistic as an explanation of the Atlantean mystery. The Fate of Atlantis feels like a blockbuster experience due to its setting and stakes, and like its cinematic counterpart, escalates like the globe-trotting adventures Lucasfilm successfully brought to the box office. What makes it such a great Indiana Jones story, however, is that its scope and Indy's relationship with Sophia don't feel shoehorned into the lore of the series. While investigating the mystery of Atlantis, Sophia and Indy get the chance to explore their once intimate working relationship, and the player gets to see exactly why it didn't work out. At the same time, Fate of Atlantis also shifted expectations for point-and-click adventure games, as its CD-ROM release 1 year after its debut featured voice acting and sound upgrades unheard of for the genre. For many, the silent version of the game was more than enough to win Game of the Year considerations, but its fully realized voice-supported experience elevated adventure games to new heights. For me, this makes Fate of Atlantis a core memory, alongside its Last Crusade graphic adventure. These games can truly test your creative abilities as a gamer, and the technology limits of the era didn't stop everyone from playing them, but it makes you wonder just how much bigger the audience could have been without those barriers. To this day, you'll still find many Indiana Jones fans who have never played The Fate of Atlantis, and despite its legendary status in graphic adventure history, it remains as one game that I desperately hope gets remastered one day. Even if it's one of the biggest longshots to ever happen. These games weren't just fun to play, they were gorgeous, with well-designed landscapes, art, and areas to explore. It really should be a possibility for a revisit, as it seems like the creative teams from LucasArts truly understood the character, even if the minds behind the most recent Indiana Jones movies clearly didn't. But what did you think? Did you play the forgotten era of Indiana Jones? Let us know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching this retrospective on Indiana Jones and his graphic adventures. Stay tuned for more retrospectives on this channel, and if you want to see more, we're always open to suggestions. And until next time, pop culture nerds, keep on dissecting.